Let me first of all say I'm really pleased to be here with Jack Reed today as a senior member of the Banking Committee, a strong advocate for consumer protection, and a strong voice in the formation of the bill that we simply want to go to in order to protect all consumers in this country and to protect the nation. And I appreciate as well Jim Guest on behalf of Consumers Union and their advocacy, as well as Gloria, to talk about her personal story. We appreciate her sharing her story because it's emblematic of what we're trying to avoid for the future. But the reality is that the entire Wall Street reform bill is a consumer protection measure. It's about protecting the jobs, homes, and savings of folks who work for a living. The economic devastation that millions of families have faced over the past few years was caused in large part because of the reckless actions some on Wall Street took with their money, which is why when we implement accountability on Wall Street, we are doing so to protect consumers, to protect families who want to restore their belief that if they put in a hard day's work and are responsible with their paycheck, their money will always be there for them when they go to the bank. Through the reforms we're pursuing, we'll have opportunity to implement common sense rules on Wall Street that do the following: that will end taxpayer bailouts by making banks prepay for their own funerals. That will end the concept of that it's too big an institution to fail, with new requirements to prevent firms from growing dangerously unwieldy. That will shine sunlight on the shadowy markets where the biggest gambles take place. And also, meanwhile, there'll be a new cop on the beat, an independent agency with the singular mission of protecting consumers like Gloria. Mortgages, credit cards, and other financial products written in plain English. And we intend to make the Securities and Exchange Commission smart and aggressive enough to catch the Bernie Madoffs of the world. Yes, by keeping Wall Street accountable, we are keeping families economically secure. That's something families from coast to coast fully understand, and that's why they're clamoring for action. Millions of families who spent the last 2 years worried about their jobs, homes, and savings don't just want Wall Street accountability now, they wanted it yesterday. Which brings us to the question, what's wrong with our Republican colleagues? Where were they yesterday when the American people needed them to help simply start the debate that brings us closer to common sense rules for Wall Street? The approach some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have taken on Wall Street symbolizes America's worst fear about how the powerful operate. They held a closed-door strategy session with Wall Street executives. They marched out on the floor of the Senate with a playbook with Wall Street written by the nation's Republican top political consultant. Rather than debating what's in the bill, they went to their playbook. They played the fear card and talked about bailouts and told Americans they would pay, which was simply untrue. And when Americans realized that Wall Street reform had nothing to do with bailouts, when the public's distaste for the obvious misrepresentation of what we're trying to do became clear, they then claimed to embrace reform in front of the cameras. But behind the scenes, behind closed doors, they continue to strategize with Wall Street about how to kill this legislation. The fact is, the citizens want action. They've lost their jobs, in many cases their health care. Some have lost their homes and savings because of some of the reckless excesses of some Wall Street profiteers. People want accountability, not trickery. They want someone to stand up for them and mean it, not someone who stands up for Wall Street and finds a clever way to make it look like they're for Main Street. Our Republican colleagues are talking like they're finally aboard the Wall Street reform bandwagon, but all we've seen them do is put on the emergency brake. So we hold them responsible. We ask for them to join us simply to move the debate forward. Wall Street reform is political dynamite, and Republicans just lit the match. Some of our colleagues voted to give big banks $700 billion of taxpayer funds, but now oppose holding them accountable for it. The fact is, over the past few months, It seems to me that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, Republicans, have positioned themselves on the side of the special interests. On health care, they stood with the insurance companies. On tobacco legislation, they stood with big tobacco. On Wall Street reform, they're standing up with corporate interests. Things become pretty clear at the end of the day of who you stand for. We believe that in this one, standing up for consumers, standing up for investors, standing up for the common person, is in essence what's so compelling about moving to Wall Street reform.